Biafrans and Nigerian Christians are about to get what they've always wanted, the breakup of the country. Because Ryan Garcia just tweeted that there's a genocide happening in Nigeria right now where the Muslims are genociding the Christians. I just saw a video by Bill Meher on TikTok, yeah, saying that 100,000 Christians have been killed this year in Nigeria. You can see this, you could go ahead and read this comment. But again, if you believe there's a genocide in Nigeria and the Muslims are killing the Christians, if you believe that, then no problem. This is good news. Because eventually, I can assure you, Trump, Israel, and the rest of them are coming to save Christianity in Nigeria. They're coming. They're definitely coming. Now, if you don't want to believe this bullshit, here's what's going on. What's going on is they're coming for Burkina Faso. Bill Gates literally last week made a video. He made it. It was on an interview last week. He said it. He said Nigeria is the key to Africa. Nigeria. This man said it last week on the. Look it up. Bill Gates said this last week. Nigeria is the key to Africa. They're coming for Burkina Faso. Ibrahim Traore. They're coming for him. Right now, the president of Niger came out and made a video in Hausa and has said it, that there's a portion of Maiduguri that has been given to France, but nobody can go there. Any Nigerian who tries to go there, that place is surrounded by militant groups. So if they see you coming anywhere near there, they'll open fire. They're killing anyone to make sure France has a base. They've given them an entire village. These people that you're claiming is killing Hausa is which Hausa? Which Boko Haram? You know these people are not Hausa. You know they're foreign people. Because y'all keep forgetting, they have to come through the north before they get to. Do you understand what's going on with the farms in the north? There are no Hausa farmers left. They've killed all of them. They've destroyed. But your hatred of Hausas is going to bring about the doom of Africa. Your hatred of Muslims will bring about the doom of Africa.
Good afternoon, I'm Queen Julie loving you.
I'm Phoebe Tanko.
Okay, Phoebe Tanko. What tribe do you think is the most selfish tribe in Nigeria?
Hausa.
Why do you say that Hausas are the most selfish tribe in Nigeria?
Because they are always, in anything that's happened, they always retaliate. They don't forgive and all that.
They don't forgive?
Yeah.
Have you ever had an encounter with any Hausa person before that the person did not forgive?
Yes.
Because Biafra, well, you think Israel is going to give you Biafra when they're done?
That Israel now is the best partner that the countries of Africa could have, and it's something that is dear to our hearts. The founder of modern Zionism, the national movement of the Jewish people, was Theodor Herzl, and he said, after I liberate the Jewish people, I will go to Africa to help liberate the black people.
They're coming for Niger. This is Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. That's what this is. That's what this is. And Nigerians would share that. They saw the Charlie Kirk response. They say, yeah, we're in there. We're in there.
This is Nigeria's split. Right now, what we're looking at is an electoral map. Clearly, the southern half of Nigeria votes a lot different than the northern half, which is also reflected in its religious differences, as the southern half of Nigeria is primarily Christian and the northern half is primarily Muslim. The capital city of Abuja is basically located right on the axis where these two religious groups meet. In fact, it's an overwhelming split. Over 70% of the population of northern Nigeria is Muslim, and the inverse is true with the south. This split is true across all of Africa, as all of North Africa and the Saharan parts of the continent are Muslim, reaching pretty far south into sub-Saharan Africa here, as well as the coast on the Indian Ocean. Nigeria sits right in this area here. This reality is also the result of a long-standing trend, as indigenous religions and traditions have declined significantly over the last 100 years, and instead Christianity and Islam have grown a lot. This is all to say that this religious split in Nigeria is not unique.
Even in Nigeria, I still see it. It's there. The footprints of colonialism are all over that country. Nigeria should have never been a country. The difference in ideology from the northern side to the southern is just like insane, you know? And then when the eastern side tried to corner off and form Biafra, it was like the ex-colonists were like, no, we don't want that. So they instead empower Nigeria to crush that country. And they're like, no, we want you guys to stay like this so we can continue to pillage and take all of your resources. And it's like the footprints of colonialism are still all over Nigeria. It's in the shape of the country. It's in the map. And it's like, okay, now we're here. How do we fix this?
Nigeria was colonized by the British, and this is how it happened. Following the abolishment of slavery and the infamous Berlin Conference of 1884, the map of Nigeria was outlined for further exploration and conquest. The Royal Niger Company, known today as Unilever, was authorized to secure the territory. This is Sir George Boardman Goldie, the then governor of the Royal Niger Company. After having established itself as the de facto government of the region, encompassing over 250 ethnic groups and over 400 languages, the Royal Niger Company officially transferred control of the territory known today as Nigeria on the 1st of January 1900, receiving £865,000 as compensation. This officially marked the beginning of the British colony in Nigeria. So effectively, you could say Nigeria started out as a business deal between the Royal Niger Company and the British government.
Nigerians, I need y'all to gather here because what's happening in the world today is not so different than what happened in our own country. And I noticed a lot of young Nigerians, every single time I bring this up, y'all have nothing to say, maybe because you don't know your country's history, or maybe because you don't care or you were misinformed. But the Biafran War is more commonly known as the Biafran Genocide. And the reason why is because it led to the death of over 1 million Igbo people. It's described as the first black-on-black genocide in post-colonial Africa. Between June 1966 and October 1966, between 10,000 and 30,000 Igbo people were slaughtered. Half of them were children. The civilian death toll was so huge, Igbo people continue to suffer from a loss to this day. The reason why this conflict started was because a coup d'etat, an attempt to overthrow the government. People involved with the coup d'etat were Igbo. And so as a result, Igbo people in the north began to experience violences against them. They were oppressed. We began to be politically oppressed and continue to be politically oppressed decades later, which a lot of y'all don't want to talk about and don't think that I don't notice that. And so back then, Igbo folks decided, okay, we're going to secede. But Igbo land sits on top of the oil. I'm not talking about a war that happened a long time ago. My parents lived through the Biafran War. My own parents remember the Biafran War vividly. They decided that they were going to secede, but because Igbo land sat on top of the oil, a war ensued. Guess who was funding Nigeria's side of the war against Biafra? Great Britain. We're talking about white people continuing across diasporas, across countries, across timelines. This is the same thing that continues to repeat itself. The reason why my heart bleeds for Palestine, the reason why my heart bleeds for Congo, the reason why my heart bleeds for any black or brown country that is bound by imperialism and colonialism and white greed is because it reminds me of my own people. And I actually am watching a continued erasure of what happened to my people and my culture and my tribe in real time in my own generation. My age mates are causing an erasure of what happened to my people. I've watched people who are my age not even acknowledge, think about, research, or care about what our country did to my tribe. So that's why I'm like stressed out when I'm watching people be like, oh, I don't care. What does this have to do with me? It has everything to do with you. Because if it can happen to them, it can happen to you.
Bit of a crazy thought, but what if Biafrans actually won the Nigerian Civil War? Sometimes I wonder because my grandpa fought in the war, so I have a very personal connection to it. And my grandma suffered from kwashiorkor, however they pronounce that disease, due to malnutrition, which was actually one of the major killers during the war. So many Igbo people were dying because of malnutrition, and this was because they closed off the port. If you know your information about tribes and geographic locations, Igbos are more in the southeastern region of Nigeria, so we're closer to the Atlantic Ocean. Closing off the ports means that we lose out on a lot of food. And obviously because the British were not trying to help us out because they didn't want us to have our own country, because they wanted the resources that our land was located on, the French decided to swing right in like a savior, essentially. And the main thing they did to help us out was fly food in because so many people were starving to death. In an alternate universe, if we had won, would the French not use that help that they gave us as leverage to basically recolonize us? If you look at Francophone countries these days, they have suffered. The French government to this day are still extorting so much money from their former colonies. I just know if we had our own country, it's not that we ourselves could not be successful. It's the fact that the French would demand something from us because of their help.
The last 24 hours have made me understand truly why some black people sell out their own people. And I'm starting to realize not every black sellout hates black people. Some people do it because they realized what I just realized in the last 24 hours. I've been making videos trying to alert people about what's going on right now, how United States government brought in non-Nigerians. None of these men are Nigerians. And Hausas have been saying this. There's videos going back 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago of Hausas saying that these people coming into Nigeria to create problems and kill Christians and Nigerian Muslims are not Nigerian. I've been making videos trying to bring people's attention to this to say, look, the United States government created this. They brought foreigners to kill Nigerians. And now they're using that as an excuse to invade Nigeria. And after they invade Nigeria, they'll destroy it. And then they'll use that as a staging ground to go into Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. Let me tell you, the number of Nigerians, Easterners, Yoruba, and Igbo, mainly Igbo, who are in my comments saying, oh, you're just Hausa, you're defending, like, I'm trying to bring this up, right? And I realize how tough of a job this is going to be because of the Nigerians who are against what I am saying. I've built my platform trying to uplift black people, trying to wake black people up, at least in America. And majority of the people, detractors that I have in my profile, in my comments, are black people. So you get what I'm trying to say? When I make positive content for Nigeria to try and uplift Nigeria, it's Nigerians in my comments trying to bring that down. When I make positive content trying to uplift black people, it's black people in my content trying to bring that down. When I make my comments calling out black women, it's black women in my comments trying to tear me down. There's one lady from Chicago who just sent me a message saying how she doesn't hate me, she's not trying to be negative, but she thinks how I'm turning black women off. And it's like, you know what? At this point, I have done everything I have done right now. I've become a pariah. And the community that I'm doing it for don't give a fuck. They want the whites to come in and destroy us. So I'm sitting here realizing some of the sellouts in the black community are doing it because they realize there's no saving our people. And the only thing they can do is save their own people. So they're selling out to take money to save their own people. And I'm not going to lie. I am very much there right now because all I'm thinking is, look, I can just take money from Israel. I could take money. By the way, I have been hit up before to make content. I'll take money from them. And in exchange, I'll say, I need you to protect my family. I don't care about the rest. If you go into Nigeria, I need to make sure my family's safe. Let everybody else go fuck themselves. Because that's how I feel right now. The average Nigerian Christian identifies more with a white Christian than he does with a Nigerian Muslim, with a Hausa man. The average Nigerian Hausa man identifies more with an Arab Muslim than he does with his fellow Nigerian, with a fellow Igbo Christian. You know the funny part about this?
And there are certain people that you cannot be around.
Yep.
Right? If there's someone who is black in our church,
Nigerian Christians will watch that video and say, man, they'll brush it off. They'll brush it off. They don't care. Jesus, Holy Ghost, Israel, you see them with Israeli flags. Meanwhile, Nigerian Muslims.
These are videos sent in by sources at the Chad-Sudan border. This one, he says, shows an arms delivery passing through the Adre crossing into West Darfur. There are no visible weapons or any identifiable branding. And these are land cruisers passing through the same crossing that he's told are painted in RSF colors and turned into lethal technicals. All of this, he says, is supplied by the United Arab Emirates.
Those are the weapons that come in through Chad. And do you know how many Nigerian Muslims have been burnt alive while praying? Like they will be called to prayer. The mosque will be full. Muslims will be in there praying. Bandits will come real quick. Boom. Lock it up. Light it on fire. Burn the entire mosque. You got 200, 300 people in there dying, but they will never come out and make noise. Because I had a phone call 2 days ago. One of my friends, Sanusi Karofi, he's like my best friend in Nigeria. So I'm someone, I know y'all know him because I've posted a picture of him before, and someone commented Karofi. Sanusi Karofi is a smart man, but he's a typical Nigerian. He will never, here's why one of my accounts got banned on TikTok. I was doing a live, there was a lot of Somalis, and I said, if I'm walking and I see a fight, right, and I see a group of people fighting, I see a group of black people and I see a group of Arab Muslims, and I know the Arab Muslims, we go to the same mosque together, I'm jumping in with the black people. I don't give a shit. I will join the black people because and when it's over, I will go home and I will pray. You know, one of the 99 names of Allah, it is the all forgiving. That means God is all forgiving. I will get on my knees and I'll say, God, you've created this earth. You know the circumstances we live in. You know racism. So you understand my reasoning for joining my people. You understand, you said stand up and I will help you. So you understand my reasoning for not joining the Arabs and joining the black Christians. You understand my reasoning. If I was wrong, forgive me. If I was not, thank God. I see it happening again, I do it again. And I ask for forgiveness. When I said that, the Somalis got my account banned. They mass reported me because I will never I am black first. Wallahi, I don't care what you say. This world, what I have seen, I am black first. Because one thing I learned, the only people who believe that are black people. Every Arab you meet is Arab first. Every white Christian you meet is white first. Every Asian Christian you meet is Asian first. Every Latino Christian you meet is Latino first. Every Polynesian Christian you meet is Polynesian first. All of them, they're always their race first before their religion. Every Arab Muslim you meet is Arab first. Every Muslim from every demographic you meet is their race first before their religion. The only people that prioritize their religion is black people. Meanwhile, they're over here calling us Abid. Look at pictures. We go to Hajj. You see, they keep us under bridges. We don't even have rooms. And then we'll come back. Salaam alaikum. Bitch, suck my dick. But Nigerians are useless. Their brains are fried. And what the work it will take to undo that, God, personally, I don't have the patience for it.
Which religion did Hausa people practice before the arrival of Islam? Now, Hausa people are the largest ethnic group in Nigeria and the largest in Africa. They're predominantly found in West Africa and speak the Hausa language. Now, the Hausas, like many ethnic groups in West Africa, are mainly Muslim. But which religion did they practice before Islam? So traditionally, the Hausas practice a religion known as Bori or Mazagunji. And within the Hausa religion, they revere spirits known as Isoki. Now, sacrifices are made to particular spirits, and there are a lot of spirits and deities in the Hausa religion. For example, you have the deity associated with agriculture, Uwargwana, also known as Uwardawa. You have a spirit associated with water known as Sarkin Rafi, who is characterized as a violent, irrational spirit. Sarkin Rafi is also associated with mental illness, affliction, and drought. You also have Uwayara, who basically causes a mother and the newborn child to pass away. You also have a double-gendered snake-like god called Gajimare, and Gajimare is said to inhabit wells and watery locations. It's also said to dwell in the storm clouds, hence its name. It's probably worth pointing out that the Bori faith is mainly practiced by a subgroup of the Hausa known as Magazuo.
A vile individual committed a terrorist attack that attacked Jews because they are Jews, and attacked Britain because of our values. And while this is not a new hate, this is something Jews have always lived with, we must be clear. It is a hatred that is rising once again, and Britain must defeat it once again.
Gary, is it an attack on Britain and our values?
Yes, it is. The Jews are simply the first. After they've got the Saturday people, they will go for the Sunday people. That's an old expression. And these, and particularly militant Islamists, Islamic fundamentalists, their next target is the Christian community. We witnessed in Nigeria what really is a genocide, with fundamentalist Islamists murdering Christians. And that is what will happen in future once they feel they have dealt with the Jews. They're going to turn their attention to the Christians next. First the Saturday people, then the Sunday people.
Gary, you can see it across your face. It's completely understandable, the emotion that you're flooded with this evening. And can you just describe that to me? Is it a combination of just sadness, but also just anger and frustration?
You've summed it up exactly. It's tremendous frustration with government that we have seen a government that's allowed itself to do nothing, essentially. Keir Starmer's words are all very well, but what action has he taken? What action has the government ministers taken? That is why there's so much disappointment.
So basically what's going on is that the West has lost a massive source of income and resource in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, right? So now they are trying to find an excuse to get into these countries. And these three countries know that. So that's why they came out. So the argument here is that there's genocide in Nigeria from Muslims, right? So they're going to go and save the Nigerian Muslims. After they've wrecked Nigeria, they'll use that as a staging ground to go into Niger. From Niger, they go into Mali. From Mali, Burkina Faso. They want to take back these countries and the resources from the West. See, the thing about this, more Muslim Nigerians have been killed by Christians. But the narrative, again, if you know the narrative, you control the narrative, that's all that matters. So you have people like this one. This woman, you see what she says, right? This is her. She doesn't even live in Nigeria. See, this woman, when she's outside of Nigeria, no one looks at her and goes, are you Igbo? Are you Hausa? No, they call her a fucking nigger. But she, because of the mindset of Africans, she has generational hatred for a different group, a different tribe. And they are now calling for Israel to come in and destroy the Hausas, not understanding that this is a long-term goal to destroy 4 African nations. This is another one. It turns out this one is Ghanaian because his name is Kwesi. The Muslims, man, if they get their act together. Let me explain something. More Muslims have been killed by Christians because when Muslims get killed, again, we live in this world. You see what's happening in Sudan. You see what's happening in Somalia. You see what's happening in Ethiopia. What you call it? Eritrea. No one's making the noise about this. So the point here is, these guys, these bandits don't have a religion. They don't care about religion. This is coming from a northerner, right? They will go there during Friday prayers or during prayer. They will pick an evening, a desolate town. They will go there while the people are praying, 200-300 people in the mosque. They will barricade the mosque and light it on fire. They will kill everyone in that town. In Nigeria, everyone goes mum. No one wants to talk because Muslims, again, majority of Nigerian Muslims in Nigeria are uneducated. Western education, they know a lot about Islam, but they're not educated, so they're not as tech savvy. So they talk between themselves, but no one's on the internet making noise, right? But then when the same thing happens with, say, 50 Christians, the whole world is talking about it. More Nigerian Muslims have been killed by Christians, but the narrative that they've created is that there is a genocide. You saw what that guy said. He's trying to stoke anger. The last words he said, what is the prime minister doing about it? He's trying to stoke anger. Eventually, the white Christians in Britain will get angry enough. The white Christians in America will get angry enough. They'll push their leaders. We have to save the Nigerian Christians. So America and its people will come in. They'll turn Nigeria into Libya. Now, while the country is wrecked, they have access to our resources, and then they go into Niger because that's right next door to Nigeria. They'll wreck Niger, get the uranium back, because right now, check this out, World Bank is banning Niger from selling its gold.
What's up, beautiful people? We have another breaking news coming from Niger. The World Bank Court has banned Niger from selling their uranium from the Somer mine, the Orano mine. Remember a couple of months back, I shared with you all here that the government of Niger, under the leadership of General Abdurrahman Tiani, had nationalized the Orano mine, which is sometimes called the Somer mine. Apparently, France was not satisfied with that because it has really hit them to the bones. So they had to take the government of Niger to court. Right? They took the government of Niger to court, and the verdict came out a couple of days back. The World Bank is ordering Niger not to sell uranium from the Somer mine. This is interesting, right? It is very interesting. This is interesting. Do you know what this means? First of all, it's not going to happen, right? So you don't even need to bother about that. As far as we are concerned, what the World Bank Court said is a no event. It is a no event, a total no event. Now, let's analyze a few things. What does this tell us? This proves to us who needs who in reality in this war. This proves to us between France and Niger who needs who to survive. Niger does not need France to survive. The proof is Niger has been surviving without France for more than 3 years now. But France, just a few months since the Somer mine was nationalized, we heard of the several nuclear plants that got shut down in France, right? Even though they were trying to tell us that it was because of jellyfish that was blocking the turbines and blah, 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 blah. So our question is, it's been more than 4 months. Why have you guys not repaired the turbines? You guys are still removing the jellyfish for 4 months. till today. I love what is happening, guys. I just wish some African leaders could stop being jealous and join the AES in this fight for Africa's sovereignty. Oh my God, trust me, if they did that, Europe is going to crash in a few days, few weeks, few months, and they are going to be right down on their knees. Imagine if countries like Nigeria joined the train, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Togo, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, and other countries, Ghana, and all of them. If every of these countries join the train and say, we are going to be sovereign countries, we do not allow you to take our resources anymore. If you want to buy, we are going to sell it to you at the prices of the international market. Nationalize all these companies. Trust me, Europe is going to fall like a free fall. I'm telling you. So guys, that's just what I wanted to share with you. Let me know what you also think in the comment section. And hey, again, trust me, that is a no event. Niger is going to continue selling their uranium to those who want to purchase at appropriate prices. And another question we want to ask here, where is that hypocrisy that France came and said they want to be genuine this time around with Niger? So can you guys see, you can never be a friend with France because they are snakes and they would remain snakes. And now I think a lot of people would begin to understand why sometimes we are not happy with a young president like the president of Senegal who is still in bed with France, because there is no way France would ever be a friend.
So they're doing everything to squeeze these countries and create chaos and bomb them to back to whatever and take control of our resources. But idiots like this and this, who have so much generational hatred for their own kind, will invite those people in to destroy 4 African nations so that the white man can make more money.
Of the citizens of Niger.
We have to be allowed to do what we want, to appoint the president we need. Outsiders must not impose people upon us to manage us. That's the end of it.
As citizens of Niger, we're against the French military bases, the American bases, the Canadian and the Italian bases. All those foreign bases that are in Niger, we don't need them.
Our armed forces must not give in to any blackmail. Niger is resilient. We are resilient. What we produce, our GDP, is more than enough for us to survive. We call on the armed forces, the security forces, to resist those attempts to blackmail us.
It's interesting, when it comes to the conflict in Ukraine, Macron makes it all about the interests of Ukrainians. But when unrest breaks out in Niger, it's all about French interests. It wasn't that long ago that Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni was undressing France on the world stage and exposing its colonial interests in all their glory.
This is a child who works in a gold mine in Burkina Faso. It's one of the poorest nations in the world. France prints colonial money for Burkina Faso, which has gold. In return, they demanded 50% of everything Burkina Faso exports ends up in the coffers of the French treasury. The gold that this child goes down a tunnel to extract mostly ends up in the coffers of the French state. So the solution is not to take the Africans and bring them to Europe. The solution is to free Africa from certain Europeans who exploit it and allow these people to live off what they have.
In the end, Macron might try to dress up and justify his actions and frustrations as defending democracy in Niger rather than economic neocolonialism. But the reality is that the emperor really is just standing there in his fancy Lacoste boxer shorts by this point.
Well, earlier we discussed this with an activist from South Africa who says that Niger's sudden decision to stop exporting uranium and gold will bring some rather severe consequences to France.
Cancelling and blocking any sales to France of the uranium will not affect them in any way, because after all, they were not benefiting. It will affect France immensely, because the existence of France, the French economy's entire existence, depends on exploitation of Africans and African resources. There is no France without Africa. And I am happy that the Francophone, the French-speaking African countries are eventually waking up and demanding their worth and realizing their worth. France is a criminal state that survives on looting and exploiting and stealing and killing of African people in the French-speaking countries all over, in Congo, Burkina Faso, everywhere. Russia has already played a pivotal role in awakening the black people. Russia has worked as a messiah who was sent to Africa to awaken them, to conscientize, because the relationship that African people and the African countries had with the West was that of slavery, was that of master and a slave, was that of colonialism, and it was that of a garden boy and a kitchen cat. Russia then came.
Okay, first off, just like Confederates and Nazis, right? Your ancestors woke up one day, for no reason, decided we want to start a war, right? Well, not for no reason. The Nazis did it because they believe in purity. Your people, Biafrans, did it because of greed, and Confederates did it because of slavery. Either way, three of your ancestors got up, started a fight, got their asses handed to them. They got beat like little fucking children. They got beat the fuck up. And somehow, fast forward today, you're still trying to revive. Like, you have pride in your ancestors' loss, and you're trying to revive that shit. We are not Biafra. You know what's so amazing is somehow you think the Iraqi Christians are living good in Iraq. Nothing happened to them. They were left untouched. You also think the Libyan Christians and the Libyan Jews were left untouched. Let me tell you, dumbass, something. You with your fucking foreign boyfriend or foreign man that you out here chasing like the fucking dumb bitch you are. When they come, they will destroy your village. They will kill everyone. And I hope your family's first in line. By the way, this Biafran thing, you know why I fucking hate Biafrans? Because my family lived in Elele when Biafran War started. Your fucking pathetic ancestors, worthless bitch of ancestors who got beat the fuck up. They killed my grandparents. My family lived in the south when Biafran War started. We were the Hausa people that lived on the southern part of things. My grandmother is Elele she's Okanyali. And you guys came and, oh, Hausa. My father actually made a video. My dad posted a video on it where the Biafran whatever, they had my dad come in there and give his speech. And he was talking. He said he saw them. Nzombu Onyimba. He said he saw them come in his compound. He was a child. He watched them butcher his mother. And now you are in Biafran. I truly hope. When this is over, if they ever come to Nigeria, I promise you, anybody I see say the word Biafra, I will because Nigeria will be a lawless place, and you will learn. So Marco Rubio has officially put in a petition or whatever the fuck it's called to reclassify Nigeria. Nigeria, basically, or if it passes, if the resolution passes, then Nigeria is one resolution away from being a terrorist state. And once Nigeria becomes a terrorist state, the thing is, once this resolution passes, America legally, well, technically, America can legally, from American perspective, not the global, but from America perspective, they can legally go to Nigeria to save the Christians. I made a video saying Nigeria is about to be turned to Gaza. They thought I was playing. Y'all seen Libya? Yes, I'm laughing because as much as it breaks my heart, I could always run to Kenya. I can literally use my American passport to move to Kenya. I could use my American passport to go to Ghana. I can use my American passport to go to a lot of places. I can also use my Nigerian passport to go to a bunch of places. But those of you who are in Nigeria with the Israeli flags and praising Charlie Kirk, they're coming to rescue you soon in Jesus' name.
My God. My God, Charlie. Charlie Kirk, oh my God. Oh no, my God. Why, oh God? Charlie doesn't deserve this. What is going on? What is going on? 31-year-old, beautiful wife, 2 children, now he's gone. This is evil. This is not acceptable. This is evil. Why? So we have become so divided in this country that people don't have political opinion. People have taken it upon themselves to kill anyone that speaks truth. Doesn't Charlie have the right to speak the truth? Irrespective of the fact whether you agree on what he said or know what he believes. What kind of word is this?
Why are Nigerians who live in Nigeria crying over the death of Charlie Kirk? Because the average Nigerian reeks of mediocrity. That's why. Mediocrity is all we know. And it's not entirely our fault. This is more so the trickle-down effect of colonization, slavery, white supremacy, living in a white supremacist world, worshiping a white supremacist as white Jesus. Hopefully the algorithm will be fair with this one, Chad. It's not our fault. The colonizer has dropped all kinds of fuck shit in our heads. And we as a collective, as a black collective, a lot of us reek of this mediocrity, but it's worse with a lot of Nigerians. And I know I sound biased, but I'm just keeping it real, Chad. Being a Nigerian who was born in Nigeria and lived in Nigeria, lived amongst Nigerians, there's just this malarkey that my people reek, and it's worse when religion is involved. And God forbid. And those of us who see through this malarkey and challenge this malarkey, we're seen as the outcasts, the rejects, the losers of society. We're reprimanded, we're ostracized, we're called anything but a child of God because we see through the bullshit and refuse to conform. We thank God. There's this collective religious and spiritual hypocrisy that my people reek of, that we spend so much time pointing out each other's sins. That's what we do. We make so much noise about each other's sins while desperately trying so hard to hide our own fuck shit. And because someone like Charlie Kirk is a white man just like white Jesus, a white man from the US in the United States of America being a literal heaven on earth to a lot of Africans, specifically Nigerians, we thank God. And for some fucking weird ass reason, my Nigerian people, all the way in their fucking villages, you have empathy for a white man that doesn't even know that your black ass exists, as opposed to you giving that energy to fixing your own fucking country so that we don't all have to run to Obodo Yibo by fire by force. We thank God. The exact same way these biscuit heads made a whole parade for Donald Trump. A whole fucking parade. I talked about this a couple of years ago on my YouTube and podcast. A whole parade about Donald Trump, praising Donald Trump, a man that don't know who the fuck you are, don't give 2 fucks about your black ass. I can't make this shit up. This is like a fucking movie. But then I'm not surprised. Like I mentioned before, Nigerians are some of the biggest white supremacists I've ever met in my life. They will deny it because who wants to admit nonsense? But it's actions, not words. Actions. By their actions, you shall know them. We thank God. Nara. So yes, that is the reason why there are Nigerians in Nigeria who are crying tattooed tears, because that shit is disingenuous as shit, over the death of Charlie Kirk, a white man that does not know that your black ass exists. I mean, rest in peace, Charlie. You know, may God be with you wherever you're at. But it's because a lot of my people wake up and eat mediocrity for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We thank God. Nara.
What is the benefit of the Nigerian state maintaining trade, economic, and political relations with Israel? Why is any country in Africa, particularly Nigeria, which is the largest economy in Africa, maintaining these trade and economic relations with Israel?
In Nigeria, outside Nigeria, and anywhere in the world, I will stand with Israel and the Jewish people. If you love the world and you want to see a better world, your interest is not just free Palestine. I mean, there are more people dying in Nigeria than are dying in Palestine. I can tell you that last year alone, over 500,000 Christians were killed in Nigeria just in 1 year. And nobody's protesting. The activists are not saying anything. For me, that's hypocrisy. In the north of Nigeria, Christians are being killed daily because the Islamic militants don't want Christians to exist in the north of Nigeria. They want to see a world where there are no Christians at all. And they want to conquer not just Nigeria, they want to conquer Africa, they want to conquer Europe, and they want to conquer America. The younger generation who want to live in a better world must speak out today. And I'm calling on all advocates of a free world to speak out.
One of the most painful stories in the history of modern Africa. In 1960, Nigeria gains its independence with a hope of unity and progress leading to a bright future. But under ethnic, religious and regional tensions, that dream soon turns to tragedy. In 1966, a military coup leads to the outbreak of a brutal civil war as the eastern region of Nigeria seeks to gain independence and form the Republic of Biafra. The story of the Republic of Biafra is told intimately by one of Africa's most brilliant writers, Chinua Achebe, in a wonderful book called There Was a Country. To read this book about the hopes and dreams of the people of the Republic of Biafra and the brutality of the Nigerian Civil War.
All right, so part 2 of the Biafra War pretext series, so that, again, before we get to the coups, before we get to the bombs and the assassinations and the generals on both sides, we need to understand the players and what they're after before we even get to the war. So they say that the war in Biafra was kicked off because of a failed coup that was blamed on the Igbos. Another thing that people say is that sometimes they blame the Yoruba people for not doing enough during the Biafra wars. So this video is going to talk about what was going on with the Yoruba people in Yoruba land, or pretty much the Western region, prior to the Biafra war kicking off, so that we can stop blaming the Yoruba people for not doing enough and look at the condition that Yoruba land was in at the time. So some very notable conflicts that was going on in Yoruba land was that the Yoruba had a conflict with the British, the Fulani Jihads, they had a conflict with the French on the western side of Yoruba land, because some of Yoruba land was actually inside of Benin. So as you can see right here, the Western region, when you think about Yoruba land was kind of like this. So the Yoruba people, their population stretched into these borders, which is why when regions get conquered by foreign powers, they draw borders that don't make sense to the people who are going to be living there. So that we can understand our history, we really got to understand what was going on with our brothers in the Western region. They were dealing with these conflicts right here. They were dealing with the conflict with the French, dealing with conflict with Daomi, Fulani Jihads, the British, and some of these notable conflicts like the Nupe versus the Fulani, Ijebu versus the British, Oyo versus Ashanti, Oyo versus Daomi, and the Oyo versus the Nupe. And I haven't even covered the Borgo people. The Yoruba people were recovering from what it was like when the Oyo Empire expanded so much that they became the top dog for a while. And when you got the #1 headband, everyone's going to try to smack you. So in order to really infiltrate Nigeria, you had to take over the Oyo Empire. And alongside that, the Oyo had a lot of kingdoms surrounding them that they were forcing to give people to the slave trade. So even though not all Yoruba people were okay with it, it still happened in Yoruba-speaking kingdoms. And that is how the slave trade greatly dominated the Bida Biafra and the Bida Benin. So when we look at this Western region, it was in recovery because it never ever had peace. It always had enemies from the past coming back to get the Yoruba people, or it had the enemies of the future coming now to get the Yoruba people. And on top of that, many of the Fulani and the House of Fulani people were of Islam jihadists, pretty much. And they wanted political power in the area. And because the Western region had the most political connection to the British, in order for the House of Fulani people to get the control that they wanted in Nigeria, the Yoruba kingdom got to go. So they got into big battles, big wars. And because the Yoruba people were already weakened from all the many battles and wars that they were already dealing with, they never really had a chance to recover and become whole again. Meanwhile, like I said in my first video, the Igbos and the Edo people, we was locked in. We was in here, you take that side, I take this side, and we smacking these mamma jammas until we free. So again, in the first video, the Igbo economy was booming in oil, palm, metal, cement, vegetation, coal, timber, rubber, and had a lot of labor. We had the labor it took to mine these things. But unfortunately, life isn't that easy. So with the Igbos being the strongest opponent, the Fulani jihads quickly started to attack the Yoruba people. And the Yoruba people said, look, we ain't got no time to fight another one of these, bruh. We don't got no time. So now that the House of Fulani people pretty much didn't have to really fight the Yoruba people, next came the Midwest region. And we're going to understand what it was that caused this argument between, or I could say economic difference between the Hausa people, or you could say the Fulani people, the House of Fulani people, because they one house, the House of Fulani, and the Igbo people. The issue was a struggle for power. So no matter what, even though the House of Fulani people do not hate the Igbos, they want political power and autonomy. They want to be able to have their own power in the country. And all of these regions, all of them, all four of them, hate the fact that the British and the French have created these borders that have confused the power dynamic in Nigeria. So we are not to be blaming the Yoruba people. And we're not to be blaming the Fulani and the Hausa people, because we're all Nigerian. And this is what happens when foreign powers invade a nation and confuse these people into having to get into this dog-eat-dog mentality. Because once the Fulani pretty much walked into here, we come across the Igbos having to protect this. So once we see a lot of violence happening between the Fulani and the Igbos, Biafra begins to take its own shape like, nah, bruh, you ain't finna be stepping on me like you stepped on them over there. But at the same time, the British had a lot of money being made in Lagos. So the English power in the Western region prevented the houses from really taking all of this over. And this is when you see the English Empire invading in to prevent a lot of things from happening. So now we have the British conflict happening in Yoruba land, whether it's against the Yoruba leadership directly or against an enemy power inside of Yoruba land that's seeking to occupy what the British believe belongs to them. So as the House of Fulani people begin to invade these areas and get into these brutal battles, and I'm not going to talk about the amount of death that's going on, we're just going to say they fought, the British had to step in and say, hey, yo, you fucking up the money. And they don't want to work with the Fulani people because they're Muslim. So because of the religious difference between the House of Fulani people and everybody else, the way that a lot of Muslims want to run government is different than the way that Europeans want to run government. And we see that to this day, where Muslims are looked at as extremists, even when they're not. So basically at this point, now that we understand that British has to step in, the French are stepping in, everyone's fighting over the natural resources of Nigeria. So the Hausa want their own political power structure. The Igbo want their own protection because they have a whole lot of economic industry booming right now. And the Yoruba just probably want peace because they've been fighting in wars ever since they allowed the Oyo Empire to take over from where they started. So when you understand how wars collide, wars are never singular. There's a war happening here, a war happening here, a war happening here, and these wars create major tornadoes that a lot of people consider to be mega wars. So as far as Nigeria is concerned, there was lots of conflicts going forward at one time. All these conflicts were resorting in another conflict, which resorted in another conflict. And until people were satisfied with what they got from the war, they were going to seek another conflict. So we find the War of Biafra meeting ahead when the House of Fulani begin to attack Igbos wherever they find them. And this becomes a big issue because the Igbos was not having that shit. So part 3 is going to be covering what happens when the Igbos and the Fulani people collide. Stay tuned. All right, so part 3 of our Biafra War pretext series so that we can understand prior to getting to the coups and the bombs and the assassinations and who did what to who, we have to cover the full basis of the background. So in our first video, we talked about how the British Protectorate thought it was a good idea to take Nigeria and draw these goofy ass borders that made no sense to the people who are living in Nigeria. Because as you can see with these major kingdoms, their borders stretch out further and have different lines within them than the border of the British Protectorate. In the second video, we covered how the Midwest region broke off from the Western region to pretty much economically join with the Eastern region. So you remember this from the last two videos. We have the Midwest region that was voted to separate and economically join Biafra. And then we still have the West region, which is technically Yoruba land, that also stretched over into what is modern day Benin because of its connection with old Dahomey. So we're not going to cover Dahomey and the Yoruba people yet, and the Oyo Empire yet. But just know, at this time, the Yoruba people were recovering from nonstop wars and recovering from being invaded from the slave trade for the past 150 years with no peace. So the Yoruba people were not really in the best shape to fight anyone. But who was in great shape to fight? The House of Fulani people, who were the descendants of the Sokoto Caliphate. So as you can see on this map, we have a lot of pennies. Each penny represents about 50,000 Igbos, and it represents the overwhelming Igbo population in Nigeria. Now, there would be a lot more pennies in Cameroon, but I'm only showing you what it was like when you considered the Igbo population in Nigeria. It looked a lot like this. An overwhelming amount of Igbos in Biafra, a lot of Igbos in Benin, Igbos in the Lagos area, Yoruba land, and even in Benin. And then you had a scattered amount of 50,000 here, 50,000 here, spread out among the Sokoto Caliphate area or House of Fulani land. So as we discussed in the last video, the British Protectorate drawing these borders created a power vacuum of political power struggles in the Nigerian area. That means that the leaders in the Yoruba people, the leaders of the Edo people, and the leaders of the Igbo people, and the leaders of the House of Fulani land were all vying to control the land that the British Protectorate had driven a border on. So this is why, again, I mentioned in the last video, when foreign powers invade and create these borders that don't make sense to the people living in them, it creates a power vacuum. And this power vacuum is called the Biafra War, or what you can call the Nigerian Civil War. So again, we're in part 3. Part 2 was the last video. Part 1 was a video before that. And here we're covering the spread of the Igbo population prior to the conflict reaching a serious and lethal turn between the Igbos and the House of Fulani people. So with the House of Fulani people pretty much taking over half of what was drawn out to be Nigeria, it's already in the minds of the people who are in the northern region that they do not seriously need the west or the eastern region to rule them politically. The only problem is the eastern region has so much oil, palm, metal, cement, vegetation, coal, timber, and rubber, and labor that the Igbos could easily generate enough economy and money to pretty much economically control the entirety of Nigeria. And with the British Protectorate being the overseer of this whole place, it's easier for them to want to work with the Igbos based on their economic growth. Even though for the moment, because of Lagos and how much it means to the British, they're working with the Yoruba people because they're technically on Yoruba land. This changes over time because once oil is discovered in Nigeria, it's discovered in the eastern region, and a part of the eastern region are the pretty much the ethnically close people, the Edo people, in what is old Benin. So before I move any further, the reason why there's so many Igbos in this area is because if you consider your ethnicity as a Nigerian by ethnic and you were a slave descendant, they took you from a place called Benin. Before it was called Nigeria in 1904, it was Benin, the Kingdom of Benin. Most of the African Americans were taken from Igbo land and Benin, as were to be sold through the Oyo Empire or by Dahomey, and there was a lot of slave trading going on the coastal areas. So when you think about why, Nigeria was created, it was pretty much created as a sign that the British ran the Niger area. That is pretty much the only reason why these borders were drawn, because this was the extent of the British Protectorate's power. This black border that I've drawn right here. Now, the Sokoto Caliphate had power all throughout this blue region right here, as you can see. The Yoruba people were dealing with the shrinking of the Oyo Empire and being invaded on all sides. So their empire used to have Old Dahomey, which is the most southern part of Benin, and a small portion of the coastal area by Togoland, which was Old Dahomey, which is where a lot of Haitians get a lot of their religion from when they think about voodoo. And the Fon people, the Fombe and the Igbo people, were two of the main ethnic groups taken to Haiti. So moving forward into 1960, by the time Nigeria begins to recover economically, they're only recovering because of the Igbo economy mainly. The Igbos are beginning to generate a whole lot of money, and the marketing and farming of the Igbo people made them very economically valuable to Nigeria, but it made them very strong competitors with the other ethnic groups in Nigeria. And here we have the basis of tribalism. So if you were House of Fulani, you were competing to succeed to represent the House of Fulani people. The same with the Biafrans, and the same with the Edo people of Old Benin, and the same with the Yoruba people. So as we look at how the British has drawn a border, and we see the borders of our people, this is how you have problems. Because we don't respect the borders of the British Protectorate. We only respect the borders within our own culture. And culturally, Nigeria had a problem that the British invading them couldn't fix. So once the British began to take their hands off of Nigeria, it was only a matter of time until we got back to settling the old business we had to deal with prior, as in who should lead Nigeria. And that is what created the Nigerian Civil War, in the same way that America had its own Civil War, because we are standing on a lot of potential, but who's going to draw it out of the country? Right now, the Igbos have the most important industry control, which is the oil, the palm, the metal, the cement, the vegetation, the coal, the timber, the rubber, and the labor. But the problem is we did not have the manpower to militarily control the country that the British had created. Who had the military might? The House of Fulani people. Who used to have the military might? The Yoruba people. But they're again recovering from 150 years of nonstop war. So with the House of Fulani having a great deal of land and a large military and a large connection to their religion, which is Islam, they decided to go on a pretty much, I don't want to call it anything else, but a power rampage. And they began to take power and take over the Nigerian government. The question then becomes, why would the House of Fulani feel the need to try to take power? Because they saw that the Igbos generating so much economy allowed them to venture into other villages and do business and do marketing and do things like that. And that created an even worse problem, where they had the fear of the Igbo success. And they did not want the Igbos to rule over them. Thus, a war was started over who will lead the country politically. Next will be part 4. And I forgot to say one last thing. The kingdom of Biafra is hundreds of years old. So before they even made Nigeria in 1904, Biafra was Biafra. I just want to go and get that out the way. We been here. We been here. That's all I'm saying. We been here holding it down. And we're going to continue to do that. Igbo Kwenu, Igbo Kwezi. All right, so part 3 of our Biafra War pretext series, so that we can understand, prior to getting to the coups and the bombs and the assassinations and who did what to who, we have to cover the full basis of the background. So in our first video, we talked about how the British Protectorate thought it was a good idea to take Nigeria and draw these goofy ass borders that made no sense to the people who are living in Nigeria. Because as you can see with these major kingdoms, their borders stretch out further and have different lines within them than the border of the British Protectorate. In the second video, we covered how the Midwest region broke off from the Western region to pretty much economically join with the Eastern region. So you remember this from the last 2 videos. We have the Midwest region that was voted to separate and economically join Biafra. And then we still have the West region, which is technically Yoruba land, that also stretched over into what is modern day Benin because of its connection with Old Dahomey. So we're not going to cover Dahomey and the Yoruba people yet, and the Oyo Empire yet. But just know, at this time, the Yoruba people were recovering from nonstop wars and recovering from being invaded from the slave trade for the past 150 years with no peace. So the Yoruba people were not really in the best shape to fight anyone. But who was in great shape to fight? The House of Fulani people, who were the descendants of the Sokoto Caliphate. So as you can see on this map, we have a lot of pennies. Each penny represents about 50,000 Igbos, and it represents the overwhelming Igbo population in Nigeria. Now, there would be a lot more pennies in Cameroon, but I'm only showing you what it was like when you considered the Igbo population in Nigeria. It looked a lot like this. An overwhelming amount of Igbos in Biafra, a lot of Igbos in Benin, Igbos in the Lagos area, Yoruba land, and even in Benin. And then you had a scattered amount of 50,000 here, 50,000 here, spread out among the Sokoto Caliphate area or House of Fulani land. So as we discussed in the last video, the British protectorate drawing these borders created a power vacuum of political power struggles in the Nigerian area. That means that the leaders in the Yoruba people, the leaders of the Edo people, and the leaders of the Igbo people, and the leaders of the House of Fulani land were all vying to control the land that the British protectorate had driven a border on. So this is why, again, I mentioned in the last video, when foreign powers invade and create these borders that don't make sense to the people living in them, it creates a power vacuum. And this power vacuum is called the Biafra War, or what you can call the Nigerian Civil War. So again, we're in part 3. Part 2 was the last video. Part 1 was a video before that. And here we're covering the spread of the Igbo population prior to the conflict reaching a serious and lethal turn between the Igbos and the House of Fulani people. So with the House of Fulani people pretty much taking over half of what was drawn out to be Nigeria, it's already in the minds of the people who are in the northern region that they do not seriously need the west or the eastern region to rule them politically. The only problem is the eastern region has so much oil, palm, metal, cement, vegetation, coal, timber, and rubber, and labor that the Igbos could easily generate enough economy and money to pretty much economically control the entirety of Nigeria. And with the British protectorate being the overseer of this whole place, it's easier for them to want to work with the Igbos based on their economic growth. Even though for the moment, because of Lagos and how much it means to the British, they are working with the Yoruba people because they're technically on Yoruba land. This changes over time because once oil is discovered in Nigeria, it's discovered in the eastern region, and a part of the eastern region are the pretty much the ethnically close people, the Edo people, in what is old Benin. So before I move any further, the reason why there's so many Igbos in this area is because if you consider your ethnicity as a Nigerian by ethnic and you were a slave descendant, they took you from a place called Benin. Before it was called Nigeria in 1904, it was Benin, the Kingdom of Benin. Most of the African Americans were taken from Igbo land and Benin, as were to be sold through the Oyo Empire or by Dahomey, and there was a lot of slave trading going on the coastal areas. So when you think about why, Nigeria was created, it was pretty much created as a sign that the British ran the Niger area. That is pretty much the only reason why these borders were drawn, because this was the extent of the British protectorate's power. This black border that I've drawn right here. Now, the Sokoto Caliphate had power all throughout this blue region right here, as you can see. The Yoruba people were dealing with the shrinking of the Oyo Empire and being invaded on all sides, so their empire used to have Old Dahomey, which is the most southern part of Benin, and a small portion of the coastal area by Togoland, which was Old Dahomey, which is where a lot of Haitians get a lot of their religion from when they think about voodoo. And the Fon people, the Fombe and the Igbo people, were two of the main ethnic groups taken to Haiti. So moving forward into 1960, By the time Nigeria begins to recover economically, they're only recovering because of the Igbo economy mainly. The Igbos are beginning to generate a whole lot of money, and the marketing and farming of the Igbo people made them very economically valuable to Nigeria, but it made them very strong competitors with the other ethnic groups in Nigeria. And here we have the basis of tribalism. So if you were House of Fulani, you were competing to succeed to represent the House of Fulani people. The same with the Biafrans, and the same with the Edo people of Old Benin, and the same with the Yoruba people. So as we look at how the British has drawn a border, and we see the borders of our people, this is how you have problems. Because we don't respect the borders of the British protectorate. We only respect the borders within our own culture. And culturally, Nigeria had a problem that the British invading them couldn't fix. So once the British began to take their hands off of Nigeria, it was only a matter of time until we got back to settling the old business we had to deal with prior, as in who should lead Nigeria. And that is what created the Nigerian Civil War, in the same way that America had its own Civil War, because we are standing on a lot of potential, but who's going to draw it out of the country? Right now, the Igbos have the most important industry control, which is the oil, the palm, the metal, the cement, the vegetation, the coal, the timber, the rubber, and the labor. But the problem is we did not have the manpower to militarily control the country that the British had created. Who had the military might? The House of Fulani people. Who used to have the military might? The Yoruba people. But they're again recovering from 150 years of nonstop war. So with the House of Fulani having a great deal of land and a large military and a large connection to their religion, which is Islam, they decided to go on a pretty much, I don't want to call it anything else, but a power rampage. And they began to take power and take over the Nigerian government. The question then becomes, why would the House of Fulani feel the need to try to take power? Because they saw that the Igbos generating so much economy allowed them to venture into other villages and do business and do marketing and do things like that. And that created an even worse problem where they had the fear of the Igbo success. And they did not want the Igbos to rule over them. Thus, a war was started over who will lead the country politically. Next will be part 4. And I forgot to say one last thing. The kingdom of Biafra is hundreds of years old. So before they even made Nigeria in 1904, Biafra was Biafra. I just want to go and get that out the way. We been here. We been here. That's all I'm saying. We been here holding it down. And we're going to continue to do that. Igbo Kwenu, Igbo Kwezi. All right, so now we're at part 4 of the Biafra War pretext. And we talked about earlier how Nigeria was invaded by the English government, how they carved up these senseless borders that don't make any sense to the people that live in them. And we also covered how after they carved these borders and made the first 3 regions of Nigeria, how the Midwest region voted to break away from the Western region, and how the Eastern region and the Midwest region had a combined economy and an economic effort outside of the Western region and the Northern region. So again, we pretty much still have 3 regions, but the Midwest region has voted to break away from the Western region, basically in order to join economic efforts with the East, which is soon to be Biafra. So when we talk about the economic importance of the Igbos, let's look at the Igbo population once again. Each of these pennies represents about 50,000 to 100,000 men that were Igbos, not including women and children. So as you can see, the Igbo population is spread all about Nigeria, especially in the west and some in the north. So the reason why these Igbos were there is because the Igbo economy was extremely important to the entirety of the Nigerian nation. So even though there were more people in the north or in the west, there was more land at least. The Igbo economy and the economy that stretched out of Igbo land or Biafra was extremely important and vital to Nigeria, making a lot of money as a nation and sustaining itself. So let's talk about the economy of the Eastern region. So for the sake of you understanding the importance of the Eastern region, the Eastern region economy was good at agriculture, rubber, cocoa, palm, education, coal, metals, and oil. Remember, we're going to come right back to this because this was extremely important. The oil that was discovered in Igbo land is going to be extremely important to the 60s. But now let's look at the Western region. The Western region had agriculture, cocoa, and education. Now, again, education is becoming a very big thing to all countries around the world. So now let's look at the Northern region. So the Northern region had a lot of agriculture. They were mining and had cement and education. Okay? So when you think about what the booming economy was like in Nigeria, the Igbos were the main ones creating markets and creating sales, and their industries were providing a lot of economic growth in the entirety of Nigeria. So this would explain why you saw so many Igbos all over the place outside of Igbo land, because the Igbos were doing a lot of business abroad, because in Igbo land was the source of a whole lot of economic booming. So let's look at this again. When you look at the economy of Igbo land, the North and the West are depending on us to get these things out of Igbo land and create these markets. This is where the Igbo pride comes from. The fact that we are so self-sufficient, blessed because of the nation that we have built and the land that we were placed on, and we're also sharing this nation, sharing our economy with the rest of Nigeria. But something happens in Nigeria once oil is discovered in a massive amount in Igbo land. It then turns the Eastern region in not only a region that doesn't need anybody's help. Nigeria starts to look like a nation that's depending on the oil that is coming out of Igbo land. So let's talk about why there would even be a competition between the Igbos and the Northern and the Western. It is because of the petroleum. Now remember, this is the 1960s, and even though agriculture is still big, rubber, cocoa, palm oil, coal, metal are big, but oil post-World War II is like an economic gold mine. So pretty much the Igbos were sitting on black gold. And with all the oil coming out of the Eastern region that was discovered, now there's more of a reason to believe that the Igbos, because they support the economy in Nigeria, they might as well control the economy in Nigeria. And the other regions did not want this to happen. The Western region likely didn't mind, but again, they're still recovering from 150 years of war and invasion. The Northerners, they do mind because of all the land that they possess once you cross the Benue and the Niger River, which you see right here. Benue River, Niger River. So as the Igbos begin to show themselves as the economic superpower and lifeblood of Nigerian economy, the outside rulers of Nigeria, the English and the French, they don't want Nigeria becoming too strong in the world. So the reason why Biafra was such a big deal, even though a lot of Nigerians believe that it was out of jealousy, it was out of a coup, all of this was stirred by the outside invaders of Nigeria to prevent Nigeria itself from unifying and becoming a major superpower because of the amount of oil and petroleum that could be developed in Igbo land. So you have to understand the main reason why when the Biafra War started that outside powers were supporting different sides is because of what was discovered in Igbo land. That put a mark on the Igbos' back. So when we talk about what the mark on the Igbos' back was placed by, it was OPEC. OPEC is the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries that was established in 1960. Oil was discovered in Igbo land in 1965. They did not want to share this oil with the Igbos, nor did anyone want to share power with the Igbos in the Nigerian government, because the English had already established that they were going to control the Yoruba people and keep the establishment's organization in the Western region where the English had the most control in Lagos. Now, nobody wanted to cross the river and try and mess with the Northerners because there were a lot of Northerners. They had a very strong military power. But again, we had our own regions before they even drew these Nigerian borders. So before we get into the coup and the bombs and the explosion, we have to understand why the Igbos were set to rule Nigeria, because honestly, The Igbos didn't need anyone. They needed the Igbos because of what the Igbos brought to Nigeria. So with all these Igbos spread about running business, how do you expect to prevent them from running for office, getting into government? You have to simply stop the Igbos by denying them. And this is where we find anti-Igbo programs, Igbo must go programs, anti-Igbo sentiment, and negative images being projected about Igbo people simply because we're dominant, we're creative, and we're capable, self-sufficient, and very intelligent. So because we were able to extract these things from the land and produce a market without anyone's help, other regions began to fear what we may do next. Because the money is one thing, the economy is another thing. But if we're going to be forced to have a government in Nigeria, who better to run it than the most powerful part of the Nigerian economy, which was Igbo land? So before the Biafra War actually kicked off, so many anti-Igbo things were happening that the Igbos began to leave other regions and come back to Igbo land for safety. So now you see less Igbos in certain areas coming right back to Igbo land, where now we believe we need to separate ourselves from the rest of Nigeria so that we can be our own oil-producing country. And dreaming too big is what created a big issue among the Igbos and other tribes. Not just the Igbos and other tribes, I'll just say the Biafrans, because that includes a lot of the Eja, the Ibibio people who were with us. So when we think about why was Biafra such a threat, it wasn't a threat. Biafra had ambition, and ambition is good. We also had resources. Resources are important. We also helped build the Nigerian economy, making us more global. So when we think about why somebody would want to stop the Igbos, it's because of the position of power that we had with the oil and the future of petroleum. So in terms of economy, you see the North, you see the West and the East. The North, y'all getting money. The West, y'all getting money. But the future of Nigeria looked like this for the Igbos. And if you let the Igbos extract all this, they're not going to need anyone but themselves. And that was the biggest fear of Biafra, that it would really break away from Nigeria. Next, we're going to talk about the beginning of the war itself and how that started. Stay tuned. Ebola Chibos. Before we get to the part of the Biafra War, where we got the assassinations and whatnot, I want you guys to know that if you get your DNA drawn and it says you're Nigerian, they didn't take you from a place called Nigeria. They took you from Benin Kingdom. The walls of Benin protected us as long as it could, and eventually the English invaded the Benin Kingdom, and the rest is history. So, I know it's saying that you're Nigerian, but you need to do a deep dive into your history so that you can realize they took you from Daomi, Igbo land, Benin Kingdom. And there's likely Edo blood in your body. Now, why is it that when you look up the Edo people, why their history being removed? Because they were the source of Benin Kingdom. And over time, the Edo people and the Igbo people were so intertwined that that is the main partnership that made Biafra as strong as it was. We had the Edo people with us, and we still do. In our blood, in our bones, in Haiti, in the Caribbean. You have to remember, before the year 1904, what was Nigeria? It was not what the British carved out of West Africa. After they destroyed Benin Kingdom, they carved out Nigeria and then named the country that is Benin today after the Bight of Benin. But when you were a slave and your ancestors were removed from West Africa, you were likely removed from Benin Kingdom. That's something you need to know before we get into the Nigerian Civil War, because a lot of the ethnic groups in Nigeria never agreed with Nigeria even being created. It was forced on West Africa by the powers of Europeans that were invading West Africa for oil. They were motivated by oil after they were no longer motivated by slavery. Do you understand that Nigeria was always going to be a problem because it was never something that those who were called Nigerian created? There were winners and losers, and the invaders decide who would win and lose, and that wasn't enough for those inside the country, which is why I say in the videos, they invaded and then they drew borders that made no sense to the people that have to live in this so-called country. So they did not enslave Nigeria. They invaded Benin Kingdom and destroyed the walls of Benin. The walls of Benin were bigger than the Great Walls of China. So you guys need to remember that your history is deep and very ogologo. That's long in Igbo. Remember that. They took you from Benin Kingdom. So Google Benin Kingdom. That is who they took you from. Most likely they took you from Benin Kingdom and spread you about the Americas and bred you with the Igbos. But we have always been one people, whether we chose each other or not. Remember that. Your history is deep. So you gotta ask yourself, if that wasn't Nigeria until 1904, where did the British take their slaves before America became America? Because in 1776, America broke off from Britain. But before 1776, America was a British colony. The British invaded Nigeria, took them as slaves along with the Spanish and the French. So think about this. Where were the British colonies at? If the British invaded Benin Kingdom, if the British invaded Biafra, where did the British take their slaves? Where were the English colonies at? You're welcome. So you mean to tell me I could read 50 books, almost 100 books, go back and spend years of my time devoting myself to learning the history of black people, tracing it all the way back to Enugu and Igbo land, just to find out that they've been suppressing Igbo education, suppressing Igbo skills, teachings, suppressing Igbo history, suppressing Igbo everything. And then as soon as I'm in a place in the world that doesn't suppress my education and I can go on the internet and talk about it, y'all gonna come out the woodworks and argue with me about this is wrong, that is wrong. This is what we know. Y'all was gonna let the Igbos get erased. Millions of Igbos died in the Biafra War. Millions of Biafrans died. Millions of people who was rolling with the Igbos died in the Biafra War. And over what? Because you were trying to force Igbo land to pay for Nigeria, a country that was created by England, which is why y'all all bond over English, because England created you. England created Nigeria the same way England created America, and I can speak English. But I'm black. The first black language is Haitian Creole, if we want to be honest. Okay? And I'm black by way of the Igbos. I know who I am, and when I talk about my history, y'all want to come on here and say that not only am I wrong, the Igbos are wrong. The Igbos are wrong about how many of y'all basically tried to just let us get extinct. We wrong about what? What are we wrong about? You mean to tell me that y'all was trying to defend the Igbos? Because this is one thing I noticed. Y'all don't say nothing nice about the Igbo people. Y'all come on here and argue about what's right and what's wrong, but I don't see none of y'all saying any compliments about the Igbos, nothing. Y'all don't even mention the fact that Igbos was fighting to free themselves from whatever y'all was about to go with, because you knew the Igbos was going to have to pay for it with their land anyway. Igbos got all the oil and the coal and the best business marketing, so we going to make them pay for it. And the Igbos was like, well, let me correct that. The Biafrans was like, we don't have to do that. It's our money, our land. You're not going to make us pay for your venture capitalist country called Nigeria. No, we're not doing that. So then the rest of Nigeria, let it happen. And if we would have won, if Biafra would have won that civil war, man, you'd be surprised how many people would have been like, I always knew the Igbos could do it. I always knew. But guess what? You feared what the Igbos were going to do if they were victorious. So people had to help destroy the Igbos.
It's the same thing happening in America. It's the same thing happening around the world. Nobody wanted the Igbos to lead. And why? Because, like, that's just the way of the world. I guess the world fears Igbo-ness because everywhere the Igbos go, someone's trying to stop them, and God has to step in the way to prevent us from being completely destroyed. Because guess what? They didn't even just shoot the Igbos. They were massacring innocent Igbo people all over Nigeria to the point that they had to flee to Biafra. Biafra became the only place that Igbos and Igbo-like, and those who connected with the Igbos to go to be safe. You were trying to erase us. Don't you? Y'all got to understand this. This is why the Igbos don't get over it. Because you was going to let millions of children get massacred. You was going to let millions of innocent people go and die of famine and sickness and disease. You was going to do that. Why? Because the Igbos had something you wanted, which was land, oil, natural resources. You didn't care what happened to the Igbos and the Biafrans. You didn't care. The same thing is, again, like why I mentioned Haiti. Everywhere that God places the Igbos, the land is blessed. That's why, look at Haiti. Y'all seen the video about Haiti's connection to Biafra and Igbo land. So what does Haiti have? A whole lot of material in that ground, and they don't want to give it up either. So what's happening? Haiti's being upended. Accept your Igbo-ness and understand we cannot allow this, dog. You guys have to know who you are. Stop coming on here arguing about the states that Europeans carved. You're not from England. You're not an Englishman. And if you read about the Englishman's journal and the English history, they'll tell you, yeah, we invaded Igbo land for the land. We wanted the resources. We wanted to create companies that were going to take the oil out the ground, and we were going to get paid for it. And as soon as Biafra didn't want to let us do what we wanted to their things, we decided to just create a civil war. And that's where Biafra learned the only way to protect yourselves is with a military. And that's why it had to be a military attack. Militaries had to get involved to protect the interests of Biafra. And that is why all these other nations ganged up to destroy Biafra. Everybody's looking at the incidents where the Igbos killed this guy and they killed that guy. If that were the case, do you think that was worth 5 million Igbos' death? Is that really how y'all feel? Because of the start of a civil war, you're going to take 5 million Igbos off the planet and starve them to death, creating a blockade, or make the Igbos kneel to the will of Nigeria, which is basically the will of Europeans. And the Igbos and Biafrans are looking at everybody like, are y'all going to let this happen? They just going to come in here and do this to us? Nah, we finna stand on 10 toes. And who else came to our support? And now that I'm talking about the history, y'all on here telling me be informed, this and that. Bro, you be informed. Go to some Igbos and compliment them on their strength for standing up against the Europeans, unlike a lot of y'all. Go to somebody who claimed Biafra and thank them for being strong and believing in their own independence, because Nigeria, even though it's separate from England, it is not independent from England. We know this. We know this. As soon as the Europeans want to hop back into Nigeria and tell y'all what to do, they're going to do that. And Biafra was an example of what happens when you try to stand up to England. And we didn't know how big the European superpowers were. But guess what? The same thing that happened in Haiti, it took the Spanish, the French, and the English to stop us. The same thing happened in Biafra. The Dutch did that. The French did that. The English did that. The Portuguese did that. 4 mega nations ganging up against Biafra, and then everybody want to tell Biafrans that we wrong. We wrong for this. Bro, get y'all asses up out of here, bro. Igbo Kwenu. I ain't got nothing else to say. I'm going to really do a deep dive on the military structures, because see, what I was going to do was just go over the history of the war, who got killed here, like very simple so that everybody could get it. But after reading all the hate in the comments, we about to get hyper specific. I'm about to talk to y'all about where people was born so that you can understand who really had allegiance and who did not. Why in the earth did we strike first? Bro, there's so many books about Biafra and why they try to remove it, because Igbos documented everything that they had to do because so many people was coming against them. This is insane how many people was not supporting Biafra and trying to be independent. And the whole time, y'all were disagreeing with the borders that originated Nigeria in the first place. But as soon as Biafra gets made, y'all want to get mad. That's crazy. And I'm thinking that England is the only problem that Nigeria ever had, bro. There's so much internal power struggles in Nigeria that I be wanting to say it's disgusting, but bruh. And then the worst part is they don't even tell y'all. Y'all aren't even allowed to know what's going on. You're not allowed to know how this happened and how that happened, but only the people who are living closest to the massacres are trying to get their message out. And like, yo, Biafra was stopped. It was stopped because it was going to do something that the European powers did not want to happen in West Africa. And now a lot of people don't even want to even mention the fact that millions of Igbos and millions of Biafrans were killed for fighting for the very thing that you like about the Europeans, that they're independent, that they got their own stuff. Why can't you have your own shit? That's what Biafra was about, protecting what's yours. It belongs to you. You're not mad at the European nations for literally dismantling your whole nation, but you mad about the Igbos for telling you about it. That makes no sense. So either you compliment the Igbos or get the hell up out of here. I'm not arguing with none of y'all asses. So many millions of Africans in the Biafra section were smacked to death, all because they were not allowed to be independent, but all these other nations get to have independence. No. We're going to talk about all of this. Oh, yeah. This ain't right. All right, so I've got to the bottom of the barrel of Igbo history, going from Henri moving forward to now. So let's talk about this very quickly. Long story short. Move, Kobe, get off the couch. Short story long, actually. From Henri, the Igbos were the only kingdom in West Africa that did not believe in expanding on the back of enslaving others. Moving forward, as other kingdoms around the kingdom of Henri advanced in enslaving others, it became a problem between the Igbos and the surrounding kingdoms, because the Igbos believed that if you were in Igbo land, you did not have to be a slave. This made Igbo land the place of refugees. So many tribes were being absorbed into Igbo land. Many tribes were being absorbed into Igbo land. The Igbos were protecting all of the other tribes that did not want to succumb to slavery. The Igbos were expanding on peace and policy. And because the Igbos were self-sufficient, you could not cut them off of anything. They didn't need you. This is why they didn't mind housing those that believed in freedom. But the slave trade was expanding, and the Igbos could no longer protect themselves. Thus, the Igbos were taken into slavery in high numbers. As slavery expands and we get to the 1700s, the United States realized we could breed these Igbos instead of having to travel back and forth to West Africa and dealing with these motherfucking pirates, these motherfucking French and other Spanish conquistadors who are stealing our cargo and causing us to do all these crazy routes and dealing with these motherfucking hurricanes. How about we just breed the Igbos on all this land that we've taken from the natives? Thus, more Native Americans are murdered. More Native Americans are murdered and moved into other parts, and Native Americans are having to gel quickly after dealing with so many refugees traveling west. And as the Americans move west, they plant and breed Igbos, and the Igbos are taken from West Africa and bred at a high rate. Now, the travel was so extreme and deadly that many slaves died. So what did the United States do? They told the other nations, if you guys want to fill in your slave population, how about you buy Igbos from us? We're breeding them. Thus, West African slave blood was mixed with the Igbo blood because the Igbo women were being forced to breed many, many children. The Igbos became the main bloodline in Haiti. Haiti got so overpopulated with black people that were Igbo mains that eventually the island took over by slaves. When the slaves took over the island, the slaves went all the way east to the edge of the island and realized we cannot hold this island forever. Thus, the Haitian
movement continued from 1804 when they established their kingdom into Cuba. This is where they erased the Igbo influence of history, but this is why you cannot erase the Igbo history, because the influence is in the language. It is in the way we changed the French language. We said this is nice, but we don't like the way you're spelling that. People like to say that Haitian Creole is not a language. It is the first black language created by us because we took French and said, you know what? After we whoop y'all ass, by the way, we need to fix the way you're spelling it. So they can say that Igbo, French, they could call it Black French, they could call it Haitian Creole. I call it Igbo French. You could call it Black and French. You could call it the best French. I don't care what you call it. Haitian Creole is a language. It is the first language of black people. So if you're black, it's important that you understand the inception of your kingdom began when Haiti took the whole island. These slaves spoke French, they spoke Spanish, and they spoke Creole. They also had a large English-speaking population because many of these slaves were coming from the United States to replace the dying slaves. So remember, this whole time, the Igbos are being bred, West African wars are happening, and as West African kingdoms enslave one another, any West African kingdom enslaving one another, the slaves will end up in America, likely die by the time they get here, and then another Igbo woman will have to mate with another one of the surviving Igbo males, or an Igbo man will have to mate with one of the surviving West African women, and another West African Igbo man will be born. So consistently, slaves were being born at least half Igbo, if not completely Igbo, or West Africans would migrate here somehow, some way, and still have to marry or mate with an Igbo. That is how these slave population was grown and expanded and survived these mass attempts of extinction. It is because the Igbos were constantly being bred. Thus, black people were surviving by mixing Igbo women and Igbo men with other West Africans. That's why every black person thinks they're Ghanaian, thinks they're Mali. If you have a Nugu in the map of your blood, it is because your ancestors were Igbos mixing with West Africans because of forced enslavement and forced repopulation to replace the dying slaves. So stop thinking you were already here. Yes, there were black Seminoles. These are dark-skinned Native Americans. There weren't enough of them to produce the millions of slaves that were dying and being killed and being repopulated and being rebred, taken to the islands, filling in the dying slave population after disease, famine, pestilence. They needed the best agricultural slaves around, and they were the Igbos. Look in American history. Look up the Virginia Igbos before they carved up all these states in the South. All of that was Virginia, and they were breeding Igbos there for more than a century. 7 to 15 to 18 kids per female. That's how many Igbo women were having kids, and any surviving male was forced to produce slaves. It was the way to produce. So as you grew crops, as you grew cotton, you grew Igbos if you were a slave master. Now let's continue. As Haiti takes over and they enter into Cuba, eventually much of Cuba was an organized slave place, but Cuba did not stop slavery until 1889. Haiti freed the fuck out of the island in 1804 officially. So by the time the Haitians crossed into Cuba and was like, all right, we're done with this motherfucking slavery, it was mass crazy warfare, guerrilla warfare. But by then, the Igbos were already getting their tentacles of the diaspora on. It was already over. The Igbos had already decided, no more slavery. We don't give a shit. If you are an African on this island, put these motherfucking chains down. Let's go. That's what it was. It was up, and the Igbos kept going until they got to Mexico and Veracruz, and the movement reached Mexico in 1824. So from Haiti in 1804-05, we get to Mexico in 1824. The Igbos is still stepping on shit. They're erasing the history, though. So you got to understand, they're not going to tell you that it just took the mass Igbo population of Igbo mains and warriors kicking people's ass up until they get to Mexico politically in 1824. By then, Hidalgo's like, all right, we're done with slavery. Mexico then kills the president. He dies. But the wave of free slaves is making its way up north towards the Rio Grande. And this is when we realize, yo, there's so many Africans coming into America not having it with slavery that when they were arriving overseas, white men that were American Rangers were shooting at them, and they're like, we don't give a fuck. They were still coming. The thing about this is they're never going to tell you about the waves of mass free slaves that was not taking L's. They were not taking L's. They was going town to town, freeing slaves, kicking people's ass. And if you didn't get your cavalry together, them 60 white men on horses, they was dead. That's the one thing they're not telling you. In 1865, when this shit was over with the Civil War, man, motherfuckers was afraid to try slavery anymore. It wasn't just a tech. So when you think about what's going on with the Haitians, black people got to understand, Haiti, we are all one. This whole freedom of black people started in 1791 and it stopped in 1865. It was not just the island thing. It was the whole North America. We are all Igbo mains mixed with French West Africa. That is why Creole is very important to black people. And if you don't think it's important, it's very important. We're not just going to learn Igbo. We have to understand as black Americans, you are black because you are an Igbo mixed with a French West African. That's why all of us got that blood. That's how we got here, bruh. Go to any kingdom you want. I don't give a fuck how Yoruba you feel. That voodoo shit, all that mixed together because of the Igbo blood mixed with all the French West Africans. That's why, look up in CBD. Cuba used it. The Igbos used it. The Ibibio used it. The Ejao used it. Everybody used it in West Africa, and it's geometric language because we were math masters and agricultural wizards. Black people freed themselves from Haiti all the way to America from 1791 to 1865, and we're still doing what we gotta do. That's where we're at. Respect Haiti, because it's the beginning of our kingdom. Us as blacks. So everybody would say, oh, they say something like this, and it's like, oh, yo, that's Haitian voodoo. That's voodoo. I know what that is. How did that even get to Haiti in the first place? I'm going to tell you. This is another misinterpretation of Biafran region things that have been taken from West Africa to America. And Igbo Nation, Biafra people, West Africans got no credit for this because they have removed it. So let's take a look at this. This is called Nsibidi. It was developed in West Africa and it began like this. All right, so starting here in West Africa, we have what would be later on the Biafra region. This is the Benue River. This is the Niger River. So you can understand that this is all that would later on become Biafra. A closer look of that is this. I don't know if you guys remember the old maps that we used in other videos, but we have this red outline region as what would be later on considered to be Biafra, a mainly Igbo-led organization pretty much. Now, once we get here, like I said, many tribes were absorbed into Igbo land looking for safety between the Niger and the Benue River kingdoms that may have been practicing slave trading. What that eventually created was a braid of our genetics going from West Africa all the way here, where they take the Igbos that they were breeding and the French West African kingdoms that were conquering each other and forcing them to have children, repopulating the slave population that was dying due to the crazy travel and the crazy sickness and disease that had existed on these places and islands and lands that the Native Americans had lived on. So as we get a closer look as to what it looked like, when they took us to the Americas, they bred us in a place like this. As people died in the Caribbean, this place in its production of Igbo slaves would send those new slaves to the Caribbean. As wars would break out in West Africa, the dying breed would be moved out the way, and the surviving winners would eventually also be taken into slavery by the Europeans, and that would be considered another piece to add to this genetic creation that would later on become Black Americans. So when you think about Nsibidi and what this is, it was something that was pretty much invented in Southeast Nigeria today, or what would become Southeast Nigeria today. And it was a symbolic mathematical communication system that different nations used to speak to one another. This was taught in schools to women, this was taught in schools to men, this was taught in schools to kids. These are the things that made us a threat. So when a society is advancing and they're very intelligent and they're very self-sufficient, you have to stop that if you want to be the one that's on top. And this is something that goes throughout all of Igbo history. Something wonderful is created, the Igbos advance, their surrounding enemies prevent that. That is how it's always been. But no matter what, the Igbos have overcome.
How did they overcome? Because God made sure of that. That's the one thing people have to understand, and I'm pretty sure it is the favor of God that makes people hate the Igbos. Because while they were trying to erase the Igbos, the whole time we were being bred. So while Igbo land was shrinking here, or while Biafra was sinking here, our people were expanding here. And as many, many people died here, our people would be spread about here. So when you think about Cuba and the Igbos, if you see this, you're seeing the people of Biafra. If you think of Haiti and you see those symbols, you're seeing the people of Biafra. Whether they give you a clear interpretation of what they're doing or not does not matter. We do know the origin and source of these things comes from this place here. So you guys got to remember, Nigerians, Black Americans, Cubans, Haitians, Jamaicans, Dominicans, Black Puerto Ricans, Afro-Latinos, you guys are all coming from the same pot. Your ancestors, as they died, were being replaced with Igbos that were forced to repopulate with your remaining surviving ancestors as they went from this area of West Africa, traveled all the way across and dealt with all the danger. If they survived, they were forced to repopulate to continue the slave engine. So we have to remember we are all connected, like I said. When you think about Haitian Creole, when you think about Cuba, and you think about the Caribbean, they are so you that this is how y'all were made. The remaining surviving slaves that were coming out of here in French West Africa had to mate with the surviving Igbo plantation slaves so that no matter what happened, they could keep the plantations full of workers. Remember that when you think about your brothers and sisters in the Caribbean, because this is a large part of our history that gets removed, but not anymore. Lastly, when you consider Dahomey and the Fon people, okay, when you consider Dahomey and the Fon people, don't just consider Dahomey and the Fon people. You got to remember, the Yoruba kingdoms did not all believe the same thing. Many Yoruba kingdoms fought against each other in disagreement. There was a large power struggle over lots and lots of goofy shit. These kingdoms were in a major power struggle. So it wasn't always about enslave this, enslave that. It was a lot about power. So if you're wondering, well, what is the Haitian connection to A, B, C, and D? And what about the Fon people? The Fon people are right here. Dahomey is right here. They fought against the Yoruba people, lost, and over time, as slavery came down to a close, more kingdoms were anti-slavery that the kingdoms that had benefited the most, like, unfortunately, the Oyo Empire, they had benefited a lot from slavery. They got conquered eventually by their enemies as well. And after that happened, it was already past 1805. So Haiti was like, get the fuck out of here with this goofy shit, no slavery. But because Cuba continued, they would sail past Haiti and load up this island right here. And no matter what, because the Spaniards still ran the island, they still made a deal with the United States to replace their dying slaves with Igbos. So even though Haiti was doing his thing and trying to stop it, it took a lot because you're talking about New Spain, New France, and the U.S. And we're flying into this motherfucker like, nah, we got to go over here. That's pretty much the way that this is going. So when you consider, well, nah, Dahomey this, Ghana that. Yeah, that's right. Dahomey and Ghana got clapped up over here and ended up over here where they had to blend with the Igbos. So no matter which one of these kingdoms you're talking about, if y'all speak French, you are in French West Africa. You were forced to breed with the Igbos here. Y'all took y'all L over here, linked up with us over here, linked up with us over here. And together, as Igbo mains, we freed ourselves collectively from 1780, not that 1791 shit. We was already getting shit popping in the 1780s until 1865. That's what y'all got to start remembering. Black history is not the U.S. is up here, Haiti's down there, and Jamaica's over there. No, because we're all genetically linked damn near the same way, their history is our history, meaning this history, and this history cannot be separated. You can't separate the 13th colony slavery from the Caribbean slavery from the Biafra, by the Biafra and by the Benin slavery. You can't separate them. If it happened along the Niger River, the Benue River, the Caribbean, Greater Antilles, Lesser Antilles, 13 colonies going out west, it's all the same linked history. It's all the same. It's all linking. So from the beginning, it links to this. They braid us together. They make this and they expand. So you don't got to be mad about Africans selling other Africans to the Europeans. It was Africans and Europeans gaining. So when you think about like all the history, you're going to have to get into America. You're going to have to get into the Caribbean. And then you'll really understand what you learned the first time you read about West Africa. Stay tuned, because we're going to have to go line by line over certain areas of history, because the next thing we're going to be doing on this channel is showing you, and I hope you guys have been paying attention, showing you this is not the only connection. The Igbo, Efek, Ibibio, Ekpe society, none of this is not the only thing. This is not the only thing. Feel free to pause and look at whatever you want to look at. Feel free to pause and look at whatever you want to look at. Feel free to pause and look at what, this is a journey of knowledge for all of us on here. This isn't some entertainment shit. This is for education purposes so that people can get their mentalities to fuck together. Because there's too much confusion happening among black people. Black people, as a people, officially started right here. Boom, 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 boom. Stay tuned, because we're going to cover more of this. I don't want to hear shit about Igbo being a dying language. Igbo's a dying language. Igbo language is dying. Your people were dying when they enslaved the Igbos and we repopulated them. Your land was dying when they brought the Igbos there and we revitalized your fucking soil. You're welcome. I'm not worried about Igbo being a dead language. Igbos can pick up something dead and make it move like it's alive. Like we've done to almost all of your fucking nations. You guys are ungrateful. Don't you ever tell me Igbo dying. Anything Igbo cannot die. The Igbo will never die. Kiss my ass. How about that? Bolachi. The Igbos on the internet need to remember that they tried to enslave you first with the Europeans and then exterminate you with your neighboring nations. Biafra was just a repeat of what happened during slavery, where the neighboring tribes would try to exterminate the Igbos out of jealousy and hate for economic dependency, because they were depending on the Igbos economically, and you didn't want to. You wanted to cut out the middleman and just get rid of the Igbos, but doing that is so heinous, you would have to get rid of us all, and God did not let you actually do that. So that's why they hate the Igbos to this day. It ain't because the Igbos are so intelligent, so hardworking, so capable of reinventing dead things. They're mad because they tried to kill every Igbo and failed. That's what happened. So when Biafra happened, the Igbos did not want to take a shitty deal. All you Igbos out there that don't know nothing about Biafra, you got to remember, there were major nations already inside the borders of Nigeria, and we were fighting over what we were always fighting over, which is economic superiority. The Igbos don't have to compete. You're already living off of the oil. You're already living off of the crops. You're already living off of our business ideas. You're already living off of the trade routes. You're already depending on the fucking Igbos. Why do you want to exterminate the Igbos? Because you're jealous and you don't like the fact that you cannot control the Igbos' destiny. So what did they do? They ganged up and they prevented the Igbos from leaving or seceding from the nation of Nigeria. So who created Nigeria? The Europeans. Who enslaved the Igbos? The Europeans. So when you think about what happened in Biafra, the Europeans were continuously enslaving Igbos and the neighboring tribes that were non-Biafra, and they let themselves be known. They were trying to exterminate the Igbos. That is a part of Nigerian history that is so crazy, because it wasn't white and black. It was two dark skins trying to kill each other over the fact that you heard this man speaking Igbo. That's crazy to me. But that's the depth of hate that the Igbos have to acknowledge and stop playing so soft. That's why I feel like fuck everybody, because no matter who you are, if you wasn't rocking with Biafra, you were rocking with the extermination of Igbos. Why were you okay with that? What made these other nations think that it's so okay to exterminate the Igbos to the point that none of the Igbo parents want to teach their kids Igbo, and none of the Igbo kids think it's cool to speak Igbo? But fuck that too. The Igbo language is not dying. The Igbo language is not dying. And we're not going to let, even if it did, like I said, it'll just get picked up again. Nothing Igbo really dies. That's another thing that the Igbo children have to understand is that, like, yo, we are the littest, most unstoppable, unerasable people. And because you have pride in that, people want you to not have pride. People want you to have pride in other things. People want you to not say anything about the Igbos. Don't say that this has anything to do with you being Igbo, because that's tribalist. Well, what's more tribalist? All those motherfucking tribes trying to erase the Igbos, or the Igbos surviving and not allowing anyone to tell them that they're not Igbo? How about that? How about we talk about that part? Why is it tribalist when I have pride, but not tribalist when you have a gun trying to erase all the motherfucking Igbos? Why is it tribalist when I have pride, but it's not tribalist when y'all was throwing hella parades, masquerades, and creating anti-Igbo programs? How am I a tribalist? How am I a tribalist? And that's why I say, get the fuck off my page with your Igbo slander. All right, so I'm going to explain this one last time, all right? We're going to go over how Haiti is mainly Igbo, okay? Haiti is mainly Igbo. I know there's a lot of people trying to say that, no, they're not mainly Igbo, they're this, they're that. No, we're going to talk about the connection between Igbo land and Haiti. We're talking about the Igbo island of Hispaniola, this right here. So you can send this to all of your Haitian friends and your Dominican friends. So this is what this is going to be about right here, this whole video. So in earlier videos, I described how the impact of war, the impact of the slave trade, and the impact of territorial disputes affected Biafra. Biafra is all of this in the red, okay? You have some important cities like Old Calabar here. You have Biafra, mainly Igbo land right here. But all of this, including the Edo people, Benin City, this close to the Yoruba. You see Abuja way up here, and you see Nigeria in a backed out view. And you have the Cameroon neighboring us. There are a lot of Igbos in the Cameroon, okay? So you have the Ibibio people. You also have the Igbo people here. You have the Edja people right here. So you see some of the linguistic representation of Igbo land. Not every single language, but they are represented. So again, we're going over how these people here became these people here. Okay, I'm going to get to Puerto Rico. I'm going to get to Cuba and Jamaica later. But right now I'm going to talk about the island of Hispaniola. All right, so Haiti and Biafra have the same people. Okay, main Igbo mixes. So in 1804, Haiti had been completely conquered by the slaves that were taken here. 1804. In 1808, the Americans, in response to what happened in Haiti in 1804, decided to take the Igbos that they already had and sell them to the Caribbean, because the Haitians right here had put a stop to the Europeans being able to freely bring Africans from here all the way into here. So because Haiti in its location and its power had affected the Spaniards' ability to trade slaves in the Greater Antilles, the English, okay, that were up here in the South at the time, decided that, look, we're going to cut a deal with the Spanish so that the Spanish can continue to fill the slave trade slots that were being affected, because the Haitians, after winning against France, also won against the Spanish. Right now, we're going to get a close-up of the Spanish domination of the Caribbean. So at the time, the Spanish had control of a great deal of the islands. They controlled it via the slave trade economy. Once the Haitians had completely stopped the slave trade over the island of Hispaniola, that affected the ability for Cuba to get slaves, which affected the ability for Jamaica to get slaves, which affected the ability for all the islands to effectively translate the slaves from island to island. So then the Spaniards and the English come together about what to do about this. And this is where America itself shows its independence from England. By now, 1776 has passed, and these are independent Americans who are looking to make a name for themselves, so they gotta cut deals, they gotta work with other empires. So the first thing that they do on the eve of 1804 is they start to develop the intra-American slave trade. They were already producing a mass amount of Igbos. The reason why they didn't need England anymore is because they were already producing a massive amount of Igbo slaves in Virginia and spreading them across the states. So they didn't need to go to Africa anymore. They were birthing their own slaves here. And with the amount of Igbos that they had so many that they decided to open their own slave market in the Caribbean in a response to the Haitians overthrowing the transatlantic slave trade. So this is why, this being the first black country after America to exist, is that influential when it comes with the history of Black America. It started on this island as far as Black America. The black people here are mainly Igbos here because these people here, as they died, were replaced by the Igbos coming from here. The Igbos coming from here are the same Igbos who eventually took over the entire island. They stopped the slave trade. Once the slave trade was stopped here, the Americans were able to sell even more Igbos to Cuba, which continued to trade slaves until 1888. So even though they banned the slave trade in 1808, it was the Atlantic slave trade that got banned and the intra-American in 1808 that began. This is how Cuba was continuously getting slaves until 1888. They were provided mainly from the Igbo crop here, much like the rest of the Caribbean. And I'm going to get to how Cuba also has a lot of Igbos. So Haiti put a stop to the transatlantic slave trade. The Igbos that put a stop to that were the Igbos that were constantly being traded from the Americas to replace the dying slaves and the dying labor on this island. So when you wonder, how are there so many Igbos in Haiti and how are there so many Igbo connections in this area? It's because these Igbos, okay, that were being bred were the Igbos that were sent to the Caribbean to replace the Africans that were being killed over the Atlantic slave trade once they would arrive malnourished, too sick, having to do backbreaking labor in backbreaking environments, drowning, being poisoned, being killed for whatever reason, would eventually get replaced. Instead of having to take a 6-month trip all the way back, you would just take whatever short trip you had to come up to Florida, to come up to Georgia, to the Carolinas, and get you an Igbo and come right back. So as this worked for them for so many centuries, once the Haitians on Haiti destroyed the slave trade from coming into the island of Hispaniola, Cuba had to rely heavily on America to replace. Jamaica had to rely heavily on America. So even though the cultural impact of some of the other tribes in West Africa exists, they exist because the Igbo influences allowed it to. But we were led out of these things that were called the slave trade by the Igbos that were sent here from the Americas to replace the death rate that was extremely high. It was a high death rate. When you arrived to your slave plantation, you usually died very fast because the labor was going to kill. I'll tell you what you're going to do. Instead of going all the way back over here, you're going to go straight up here and get you an Igbo. This is how Haiti became overwhelmingly Igbo. Yes, they're mixed, but this is why you have Creole, because the Igbos here are Creolized Igbos. We are Igbo and something else, but mainly Igbo. The Americans here, we are Igbo and something else, but mainly Igbo genetically. Even though you have Yoruba ancestors, you're mainly Igbos. Most of the people coming here do not know this about themselves because our history isn't properly taught. This is why I could care less how they teach the history now, because it isn't like the American history is acknowledging the Igbo presence enough. We're just calling it a color. but we're really Igbo people. The Igbo slaves took over this island and put a stop to the slave trade, okay? The Igbos being bred here became the replacement, because you don't want an adult that knows they should be free. You would rather take a baby that knows nothing, that was born into this. So the Igbos got to understand, how is it that there's so many connections to Igbo land in this place? Is because the Igbos were brought here, bred here, and then spread here, and the Igbo-ness will continue to spread. Do we understand what's going on now? Haiti is a realization of what Biafra was going to be, and look at what they did. They overtook the island, took 2/3 of it, and now they speak Spanish and they speak Creole, but they never left the island. This is still Igbo Island. All right, back for another episode of Igbo-ness and You. There's a lot of talk on the internet about whether or not Haitian Creole is a language. So the question is Haitian Creole a language? Well, let's answer that. The answer is definitely yes, Haitian Creole is a language, but to understand how Haiti became a language, Haitian Creole became a language, we have to take it back to 1776. So at this point, in 1776, we have arrived at the year of U.S. independence. So since the United States is now an independent nation of England, they're no longer relying on the British. So since the United States believe that they can carry life in the future on their own, they begin to separate and they write their constitution. Now, at that point, let's fast forward to 1790, when what they say is the Haitian Revolution has started. So in 1790, they say Haiti began to revolt on the island and take the whole island over. But this is the thing about that. Haiti wasn't Haiti in 1790. Haiti was Saint-Domingue. Saint-Domingue is an island that belonged to the French. And at that time, the French colonies were being ran under the codes called Black Codes. These Black Codes were for all French colonies in how to deal with their slaves. So from 1534 to roughly 1790, we have a time in which France was dealing with their slaves in a particular manner. So who were the French slaves mainly brought up of? Were French-speaking countries like the Cameroon, Niger, Benin, Togo, Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast. Many countries in West Africa that speak French to this day made up the collectives of slaves that were brought to the French colonies. So when we say the new French colonies, we're saying Louisiana. And when I say Louisiana, I don't mean this small purple boot state that came to be. I mean Louisiana as all of this orange right here. All of this was Louisiana. It was New France, including Haiti. Well, at the time, it was called Saint-Domingue. So the island of Saint-Domingue and this territory here was New France. In 1790, all of this shit was going up. It wasn't just the island. It was all of New France. So when you think about what 1790 looked like in New France, it was a slave revolt of French-speaking slaves. But the thing is, as these slaves began to die, by 1790, the French and the U.S. had been dealing Igbos across the Mississippi, which is this river right here. Up and down the Mississippi, the French can buy Igbo slaves to replace their dying slave population. From 1534 all the way up into now, instead of the French having to go all the way over here to Africa, to Benin or Cameroon or the Congo or any other place in Africa that still speaks French to this day, they would just go across the Mississippi right here, buy their Igbos from the breeding American Igbo crop, and send them where they need to go. Now, because there was mass death happening all over the plantations in New France, which is this, including Saint-Domingue, much of the Igbos in America ended up in these French territories. So by the time 1790 hit, most of the Igbos were in almost every slave that was living to this day. So when you think about the spread of the U.S. crop of Igbos into different territories all over the United States, it came from this. So when you think about the French Revolt, you're thinking about another group of main Igbo mixes that are in a different territory revolting.
That includes Saint-Domingue. So when you think about Haitian religion, they have terms like Igbo Loa because they even know that that tribe in Nigeria specifically had a lot to do with the Haitian population. But before we called them Haitians, they were French slaves. So where do we get the term black? It is because this area, when the French were taking many slaves, was simply called Negro land. They called this area in West Africa Negro land. Negro means black. Negro means black. Okay? The Niger rivers, where we get the term nigger from. So you have Negro land, Niger River, Niger, Nigeria. These are two ethnic groups that were forced to breed to constantly repopulate the dying slave population. As many Igbos crossed over, by the time 1790 hit, it was a mass Igbo main slave population that was speaking French. So when we think about how the slaves were not allowed to learn how to write and read after the alphabet, what did they do? They simply spoke whatever words they heard. And if this was New France, that means these slaves in this area spoke French without the ability to read and write it. What does French sound like when you don't read and write it in a colonial manner? It sounds like Haitian Creole. When you think about why Haiti speaks French the way that they do, it is because they are the descendants of French West African slaves brought to the Americas. But when you think about what the French did with their slaves, they didn't just take them to this small island. They spread them across what was New France, because this island was a part of this territory that belonged to the same colonial power, the French. This is why they have Louisiana voodoo and they have Haitian voodoo. They're both of the same French territory. So nothing in the Caribbean was not in the United States, and nothing in the United States was not in the Caribbean. Our histories are inseparable. If our histories are inseparable and we are mainly Igbos and they are mainly Igbos, then the Caribbean is mainly Igbos. So when I talk about how many of us share Igbo ancestry, it's not to say that there are no Yoruba people. What I'm really saying is many Yoruba people have Igbo ancestry. Many Edo people have Igbo ancestry. Many Hausa people have Igbo ancestry. Many of these countries have Igbo ancestry. Okay? So when you think about how did Haitian Creole come about? It came about with New France being created in the New Americas. This New France had the same Africans that were here. So black people are these areas. You can't separate them. So when you think about a Jamaican or a Haitian, a black Cuban or a black Puerto Rican, a black person comes from English, Spanish, and French-speaking slave territories, including Brazil. But when you think about the United States history, you can't separate Haiti because Haiti was a part of New France. New France was a part of America. And if you're a black American, for many years, for many decades and centuries, your blood and their blood was the same blood being traded across these rivers and these waters. So you can't separate Haiti from Black America. You can't separate Black America from West Africa because Black Americans are genetically connected. You know what I'm trying to say. Genetically connected. So as we continue to 1803, even with Haitian independence, the only reason why this is Haitian independence is because the French sold this territory before the Haitians could get all the way over here and claim it. But this was already in an uproar. And when France could no longer control the territory, they sold it to the Americans to take on their own, and they did just that. So that's why when you have the 1803 Louisiana Purchase, Thomas Jefferson said, since the French can't run it, we'll go over there and kick their ass then. And that's exactly what happened. Okay. Now, when you think about 1808, and the reestablishment of the intra-American slave trade, that allowed these colonies to simply slave trade with the Spanish in the remaining territories while the Americans were taking this back. Now, as we continue to 1824, the revolution continues into Mexico, where Hidalgo ends up abolishing the slave trade, and they kill him shortly after that. 1865, you know what happened to Lincoln. So when you think about how the Haitian Revolution began, it was really the new French Revolution that started in Haiti, spread throughout New France, and became the wedge of freedom that went this way in 1804, that way in 1865, and created the Black Freedom Kingdom. So Haiti is a part of it. The Spanish-speaking Black people are a part of it. The French-speaking Blacks, the English-speaking Blacks, including Brazil, we are all united with genetics. You just have to follow the religion and the language. So remember, Haiti and us, we're one. We're all Black, bro.